The next approach that I'm going to discuss sort of picks up from that point. And this is known as the natural law theory. Next one is known as the natural law theory. And the question is, well, what is the natural law theory? The natural law theory is sort of an extension of the divine command theory. What it attempts to do is locate the weaknesses in the argument for the divine command theory and strengthen the theory. So I probably shouldn't have erased it, but the natural law theory is a theological account of morality. Right? The natural law theory is a theological account of morality. And the natural law theory states that God, just like the divine command theory, God creates the laws of morality, so that remains the same. But it's a little bit different. God commands something because that thing is right, right? So we have God creates the laws of morality. But the difference is that God commands something because it is right. Which is to say, another way, it's the thing, whatever it is, it's being right, W-R-I, if I could write today, G-H-T, it's being right is independent to God's command, right? So what natural law theory says is that the reason that God commands it is because it's right. We had two different accounts in natural law theory. The natural law theory says because God commanded, the thing is right, right? Because God says you can do X, doing X is right. Natural law theory is different. Natural law theory says there is this thing X and that thing is right, right? The reason that God commands it is because He knows that it's right, so you are commanded to do so. Two different accounts. The example that I use in class to sort of make sense of this has to do with grade A beef, right? So you can think of grade A beef, right? Getting the stamp A. If we're talking about grade A beef, the question is, when U.S. Department of Agriculture or whoever is in control of inspecting beef, is it the fact that I have this stamp in my hand that says grade A beef, and the fact that I stamp the thing that makes the beef grade A, which would be divine command theory, right? The fact that God commanded, I say to do it, it makes it grade A. Is it the fact that I stamp it that makes it grade A? Or is it the fact that the thing has a particular character about it, right? It doesn't have any maggots, it's very clean, it has a certain cut, it has certain specification, it meets certain criteria, and because it's met that criteria, I then attribute the grade A to it. Well, everyone would say it's the latter, right? It's the nature or the state, the existence of the thing, and the fact that it meets certain criteria that makes the beef A quality. It's not the stamping of the beef, right, that makes it A quality. It's the nature of the beef itself. What natural law theory says is that an action being right isn't because God commanded it. It's that God commanded it because the thing is actually the right thing to do, right? Well, what we can do now is we can look at the pros and benefits of a natural law theory as opposed to the divine command theory. Okay, so first, what are some of the problems? Okay. Well, the first thing that you might look as a problem is this first thing that we said, right? Some, not all, but some theists, some believers will think that it's being right, being independent to God is a problem, right? So this might be a problem. some might see this as a benefit, right? So we might label this, some theists might say it's a problem, some theists might say it's a benefit. It's depending on whatever relationship you have or whatever religious beliefs that you have. But there are many theists, many believers that really have no problem with there being a truth in the world, and that thing is the right action to do. God recognizes that that's the right action to do, and that's why he commands it, right? That's the main distinction. The benefit, okay, the first benefit, obviously you can use reason to understand what your actions should be, right? So you can use reason. If it's the case that X is the right thing to do, and it's the right thing to do independent to God commanding it, God commands X because it's the right thing to do, then I can determine that I should do X. I can do X, right? Because I can use my reason to figure out, just like God as an intelligent being would use his, her, their reason to make an assessment of this thing X, I can use my reason, right, to determine what I should do, right? So that's the first benefit. The second benefit that I can use is that the moral agent, and I erased it, but the moral agent has the ability to choose, right? The moral agent isn't told, right, this action is the only action that you can do, or this is the right action, you have to do it. The moral agent can use his or her reason to make an assessment and realize that what I ought to do is X. Now you can choose not to do X, and your actions will be immoral, right? Your actions will not be permissible, but at least you have the ability to use your reason. What you'll hear in the media often is the following. You'll hear someone say, oh, these fundamentalists, you know, believers of whatever religious belief it is, right? These fundamentalist believers. And media folk really don't understand what fundamentalism is. Most of the time when you hear the word fundamentalism, you think extremist, and really it's not extremist. The distinction between sort of a traditional believer and a fundamentalist believer has absolutely nothing to do with whether or not they're violent or how radical their beliefs are. A fundamentalist believer simply believes in the divine command theory, right? A fundamentalist believer believes that an action is right because God commanded it, right? It's not that God commanded it. It sounds like I'm splitting hairs, but it's two totally different things, right? The question is it right because God commanded it, or did God command it because it is right? For the fundamentalist, an action is right because God commanded it. So a fundamentalist believer has a stance that an action is right because God commanded it, and the sort of fundamentalist belief, to use sort of that conception, it has nothing to do with it being negative in any sense. Is the example that I gave was the divine command theory. The distinction between a fundamentalist believer and sort of mainstream believer is that the mainstream believer believes that it's being right, the action being right, is independent to God's commandment, right? God commanded you to do X because X is actually the right thing to do. The fundamentalist believer believes God told you to do it, and him telling you to do it makes the action right. Right? So it's two very different stances. It's not the simplest thing to wrap your mind around, but I think if you watch the segment that I said not too long ago about grade A beef, you'll have an understanding of it, right? Is the attribution of the stamp grade A given because someone merely stamps the beef? Well, that doesn't seem right, some people would argue. Or is it the fact that there's a certain quality of the beef that warrants the stamp A? Right? It's the same account. Is an action being right because God commanded the action, or is an action being right a result of the action being right? God commands it because it's right.